Alright, in this tutorial we want to take a look at lighting and rendering. And we're still in our snowman project. This is week 8. And from the things I've seen on the D2L, it looks like you guys are making some good progress. And so this week, like I said, I want to introduce to you the different types of lights and a little bit about the different renderers Maya has available. So to get started, I'm going to create just a small scene. Nothing. Since we're doing a snowman project, I'll create a small snowman, just a ground plane, and maybe just some things that can throw shadows. That should be plenty. Hit 5. Alright. Maybe make these a little bigger. Alright, if we go and render a scene, and that's the preview render, this is your default lighting setup. I mean, you can see shading. You see how it's light and it goes to dark. If there were no lights, you would not see anything. So there is in Maya a default lighting setup, and you can see that if you go to your outliner, and you can see all your different objects in the scene. And right here you have a default light set. So that's so Maya gives you something to begin with. That's so you can see something when you render if you don't want to do your own light setup. However, to make your scenes look better, at some point you're going to need to take control of your own lighting. And this is so to do that, first we need to turn off our default lighting setup. Well, how do you do that? I could try to go to the outliner and delete that. I haven't tried it. I don't think it will work. Yeah, it doesn't allow me to delete that. So where you need to go is a place called your render settings, where you have your 3 clappers at the top. You can barely see mine peeking out there. And the render settings is where all the attributes are for your renders. So when you're doing a preview render, what type of file is it going to be, what camera are you rendering from, your width and height, your resolution, that sort of thing, your aspect ratio. And when we start rendering with a batch render, we'll get into more detail with this. But at the very bottom you have a slide out called render options, and that was where your magic default light button is. So if you click that off, then there will be no default lights in your scene. And when you're doing lighting setups, it's important that you do that from the beginning. But by default it's on, which is good, so you see something. But when we start doing lighting, go ahead and kill that. Alright, so now if we render, as you can probably guess, we get nothing. It's black because there are no lights. So in this first tutorial, I just want to show you one light, and maybe the next tutorial I'll show you another. But the first one I want to show you is the point light. And to create a light, you go to create lights, and you have several here. First one I want to show you is the point light. The point light, or any light when it's created, will automatically come to the origin. And if you don't have your attribute editor open, go ahead and open that, and you'll begin to see the attributes that we have available. So I'm going to pull my point light up here, and point lights broadcast light in all directions, kind of like a light bulb. 360 degrees every direction. It's kind of like the sun. And as long as we're not doing any fancy shadowing or reflections or anything like that, we can get updates on our lighting in the IPR. So let's go ahead and open our IPR, select a region, and So we can go ahead and start changing the color and see what happens when the color of our light is changed. Now for some reason when I click off, it goes to my material. It may do that with you as well, and I'll have to go back and select my light. So I'll say done. The intensity, you probably know what that does. And in previous tutorials, I do not like this because when I click off, it goes back to the Lambert. That really gets on my nerves. Anyway, if you guys find a way around that, let me know, because I want to take advantage of the IPR, but I don't like, I have to click on it to get these lines off. Alright, where was I? Okay, so you have in color, intensity. Oh, I was saying that your slider by default starts at 0, goes to 10. So can you not have anything lighter than that? If you remember, you can overdrive these values. So I can put in my own value of 50, and now 50 is at the center, so I could take this up to 100. I could go in and put even more values. So you can get really bright with your lights there. Illuminates by default. You can have a light, and if you want to turn it off temporarily, that's where you would do it. There's different types of light. There's diffuse light and specular light, and the specular highlights are on objects that have a blend, and I'll go ahead and try to demonstrate that right here. I can't go low enough, so I'm going to open up my Hypershade from Rendering Editor's Hypershade, and let's assign a blend. I'm just going to create a new blend, and I'm going to just throw that middle mouse drag on a couple of these objects. Alright. And I'm going to change its color to something slightly different so we know what objects there. Alright, so we have a blend, and notice this little highlight. That is your specular highlight. And within your material settings, there is an area on things that are shiny, your blends and your Phong materials, where you can really take that highlight up. You can kind of make it the specular highlight tighter or brighter, but as you notice, that's and see what's happening there. Alright, that is your specular light. It's not really, well, it's kind of a fake reflection, but I won't get into the physics of it because mainly I don't know the exact details of the algorithms, but I do know that that is not a reflection of any light in the scene. It's just something, it's a fake reflection that makes something look shiny. So go back to our light. To emit specular, if I turn that off, notice that we still have light in the scene, it just does not have the shine, the specularity. So that's what that does. And the emit diffuse is all the other light. So if you just want the specularity, we turn this, we kept emit specular on and emit diffuse off, and we just get these. And if there may be times when you only want one or the other, but that's where you would do that. Next thing I want to show you, I'm going to turn both of those back on. The decay rate of the point light is wherever it is, if it's at an intensity of 1 here at the origin, at 20 units away, how intense is that light when it hits something? And no decay means your light's here and it's, it has an intensity of 5, a mile away it'll have an intensity of 5, which isn't how real light works, but it can be used. But you can put in different decay rates. There's a linear decay rate, and you notice as you do that you may have to come back up here and adjust the intensity to make up for it. But now you have a fall off where you have the light here, and I don't know the math exactly behind it. For every unit it's half as bright as it was, or something to that effect. It's not realistic light. Realistic light has I think I forget the formula on that too, but that's the third one in here. If you go to if your light's selected and go to the decay rate, you have no decay, linear, and quadratic. Quadratic's how normal light works, but when you do that one you really have to boost your intensity to make that work. So you notice there's a fall off. It's bright here and it tapers off. That's with a quadratic fall off. That's with a linear fall off, and with no decay everything's lit equally, and each one's going to have slightly different. You'll have to tweak the intensity for each one to make it look right. Alright, so I'm figuring out if I click the bar up here instead of in the scene, it stays on my light. I think maybe I'm over my scene and I'm clicking the object, just in case you were wondering what I was doing there. Well, that's the point light, and I'm going to go ahead and end this section of the tutorial here. Go ahead and create some point lights, move them around in your scene, create multiple ones. You can do a Command D to duplicate it, and I just duplicated my light, and what would happen if I start mixing some colors, and you can get some interesting effects. So that's the point light. I might duplicate it one more, and I wonder what an orange light would look like. Or since it's toward the back, give it a cooler color, and then go and begin to dial down each one's intensity or decay rates. I might change them all to linear fall off, and then pull up their intensities. But you see how each light will get a different reflection, or a specular highlight, depending on where it's coming from. And I thought that was my blue light. Where's my blue light? It must have changed the color. Alright. So that's it. Those are point lights. Those are good lights that will give you a fall off where it's bright to dark, and you can change color, intensity, and decay rate. In the next tutorial I want to get into I want to show you how to do shadows and the different types of shadows. I'll see you in the next tutorial.